So recently I made a couple of AI music videos here and here, and the response seemed to be mixed. So there's a lot of criticism aimed towards AI at the moment, which I totally understand. There's a fear it's going to take people's jobs, it's fake creativity, it's lazy, and it hurts artists more than it helps them. And by golly, haven't these artists had enough of all the pain and suffering that inspire their work? But let me ask you something. When you used to see data in Star Trek painting or singing, was I the only one sitting there thinking, you bastard, how dare you? I mean, AI art, right guys? Now, I'm purposefully being facetious, I apologise. But today, I'm going to be playing more of the devil's advocate role here. So I'm prepared to take any neggy comments that you might have, but please believe me when I say that I do sometimes like to stir the pot to see what comes out. So do take it with a pinch of salt, and I mean salt. So I did an AI music video for my track Ordinary Love. Then I followed it up with my latest single Raindrops. And as you can see, it's all AI. So I did this thing, which probably wasn't the best idea, but I responded to a aggressive comment on a YouTube video, which is fine. I do tend to enjoy how angry these people get about the smallest of things that make absolutely no difference in their lives. And this guy was saying that it was lazy, AI is the death knell for creativity. And I always think it's strange that there's almost this like immediate surrender to the idea that it will just replace humans. Like, oh my God, you're giving in to them. So this video seemed to be fairly contentious. Another one said that actually that the video would be cool if it wasn't for all the AI stuff. And I didn't really understand. I didn't understand what they meant. So it's like, so you like it? Like, thanks. I mean, it's all AI, obviously. So it's like, it wouldn't be a video if you took out all the AI stuff because it's all AI. I say, well, maybe he thinks certain elements of it are AI. So anyway, my argument was, well, for one thing, it's just a bit of fun. So, you know, chill out. All right. And I know people love to be told to chill out. Secondly, I didn't see it as anything different from a visualizer or a generated lyric video. Instead, it was just a bit more visually exciting. But apparently that's different. So, okay, let's go with that. Now, this attentive gentleman said it wouldn't take much to film something similar, which, sorry, I had to disagree with. Like, sure, you can pull favors, and I've done a fair chunk of music videos for small amounts of money, free, losing money in some cases. And yes, I've done a lot of that in the past. But at the very least, it's a lot of time, which I don't have. So without time or any real budget to put towards it, then yes, I have forsaken the human touch for something that's a bit more of an experiment, let's say. But there hasn't been any job losses, because if I didn't do it, it would just be a picture of the artwork for 3.5 minutes, which is fine. And I've got that from other videos as well. But I wanted to do something a little bit different. I think it's funny that it's also seen as lazy. I mean, it's obviously lazier than if I went out and did a video, made a video, obviously. But I was like, well, that still took me like a day. Yeah, okay, right, it's lazier than making a video, granted. And I mean, there's also an element with I've used AI more than just the video. In my music making process, the mixing and mastering, I use an AI assistant, at least to start with. And I know it doesn't beat the real thing, the human touch, but we all don't have necessarily the access of time or money in this climate to afford the human touch and everything. So to be honest, if it's a case of it doesn't get done because I can't afford it, then I don't really want to be in that position. I would rather do something creative and use the tools that I have and get something out there that's something that I don't really mind if a human does it or if a computer does it. And I'm not saying that it's going to be purely AI, but if AI can help somewhat in that, such as with the music video to push a song that I did, then I don't really see what the harm is necessarily. But okay, like, people have just got a problem with it from an ethical point of view, and I understand that. And it's also funny because my background is in production, like making TV shows, films, commercials, branded content, music videos, ironically enough. Literally making videos what puts food on the table for me and my family. So, you know, you think surely I'd be against it, right? Well, I don't really sit in either camp at the moment, because there's an element where I'm so bloody old where I've kind of seen this thing before, like, and I've always tried to stay ahead rather than plant my feet in the ground and, you know, with my arms crossed and well, no, it's wrong. And it's why I've always been able to keep my, you know, head above water. And that's just the way of the world, and there's not really much you can do about that, but it's just worth being open to what it could do for you and your career, and see where it could be more useful rather than seeing it as an enemy, because it's a losing battle. You're just not going to win it. And that's the point. There's an element where you just can't stop progress. We'll get to a point where this stuff will be commonplace, and so be it. But I think that in a positive way, I like to think of it as that it could potentially force people to raise their game and perhaps think a little bit differently. There's an element here like, look, if your work can easily be replicated by a computer, then you need to do something different, because like everything in this world, the market is the great dictator. If someone can get the same thing cheaper and quicker, they'll do it. It's like, but it won't be the same, it won't be as good quality or whatever. Well, if that's the case, then you've got nothing to worry about, right? Because if it doesn't look good, it doesn't look good. But there's an element where it's like people will probably take that risk because, as I said, it's quicker, it's cheaper, and if it's roundabout doing what they need it to do, then that's fine. They'll go for it. But look, before everyone sounds off or anything like that, I understand there are a couple of issues, at least, that are a real problem. And firstly, the fact that it basically scrapes everyone's work together, mixes it up, and that essentially whatever you're doing, you're making through AI has been inspired or is a result of copying to some degree in some fashion of someone else's work. Well, guess what? Unless you're a true original, pretty much everything you do is ripping off someone else. And that's, again, purposefully contentious. Are you using a guitar, like standard tuning? Are you using a computer for your synths with sounds that someone else programmed in? Like, I know it's something different and it's a different thing, but you still have an element of control. And AI can do whole songs now. And you know what? Maybe they'll sound great, and maybe they'll be hits. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, if I like listening to music, I don't really care who sung it or where it's come from or whatever like that. I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, okay, has this been... It's like, if I like a song or I like a tune, then I like it. I just want to listen to music. And if it means that, like, there's a lot of like dance and EDM, for instance, that to me, it might as well be AI generated. I probably wouldn't be able to tell anyway, because I'm a Philistine, an uncultured, horrible freak. But for me, I'm like, well, look, does that mean people will try to push away from what AI is creating? Does that make sense? Like, perhaps that it'll force people to make more strange, different, unique sounds that is completely, could never ever be mistaken for being AI music. And if so, then I'm up for it. Like, I'm a fan of the noise genre, for instance, which, like, again, like, people can't listen to, but I actually quite enjoy. So all that sounds exciting to me. I would love to see what people are going to come up with in the terms of rejecting what the AI algorithm sounds like, in terms of making a particular type of song or track or popular music or whatever it might be. Like, what's going to be the antithesis of that? That's quite exciting. And another argument is that, well, look, all this AI content that's out there, right? You're drowning the sounds of like real people and real artists that are trying to get heard. And you know what? It won't make a slither of a difference for how it is right now, because it is difficult enough to get your music heard over the noise anyway. And I think that if the amount of daily songs that got uploaded was multiplied 100 times over, I think a few meager listens is still what I would manage to get anyway. It's like, it wouldn't make... The listens I get from all this stuff is from promoting myself, from marketing and things like that, which you obviously can do with a computer. But there's an element where it's like people enjoy that human interaction, and that's what makes it stand out. But I just think it doesn't really make that much of a difference if you're releasing your music into nothing anyway, and you're not marketing it or doing whatever, and it just becomes one of a million songs that get uploaded each day. And because that might go to like 1 in 10 million songs because of AI music, it's like, it's all the same. It becomes a point where it doesn't even matter anymore. And that's kind of where we are because of the music industry. And that's not AI's fault. Not that it's like, not I'm personifying it as a victim, but I don't really think there's much of an argument for that. And, Spotify and all these people, it might be like, AI music, they don't care. They're probably hoping that there's a way that they can kind of automate and get more money out of it, because essentially, it's making more content for them to have at their disposal. And if even if a few tracks of that become hits and are really popular or whatever, then, good for them. They don't care. It's got nothing. It makes absolutely no difference to them. It's just content. But the idea here is that, as a human musician, you're going to find that people will resonate more with that human connection. And maybe it means like a resurgence in live music, for instance. It's just like, it's not like the be all and end all. It become more mainstream, it will start sounding the same or whatever, and people might retaliate against it. And as I said, they might come up with more interesting, cooler stuff. I guess like this whole thing of, now another thing is this whole thing of people's voices being recreated, right? And tracks being made using their voice. And that's weird, and I get it. But is it not the same maybe as sampling? Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's not you, then it's not you. And again, is that music just as good or better than yours with your AI voice on? Because if it is, then that's not great either. You know, it's like, what do you do? But I mean, like in that case, like it's fraud. If you're fraudulently going out there and saying it's this person and it's their voice and it's not, then yeah, that's fraud and that's bad. And it should be treated as so. But like, no, I don't know. I mean, like I watch things like, you know, when they do like CGI Carrie Fisher, or they use James Earl Jones's Darth Vader voice, but he's not actually doing it. It's like all AI or whatever. And yeah, like their estate is still getting paid and whatnot. But I'm like, oh, that's not really on, is it? You know, they don't have a say on how it's being used or what they're being made to say. And it's supposed to be them, you know, even if it's not actually them. And then that's a whole other weird thing, which I don't really understand either. But to me, that's just as much of an art. And does that make it okay because the family said it's okay? I mean, it just feels weird, let's be honest. So yeah, I'm kind of bouncing around here. So like, you know, but what do I know? I just don't know why, since the beginning of time really, people just really get hung up on gatekeeping what art is. Like no one can necessarily say. I mean, personally, I like experimenting with the randomness of what AI comes up with. And sometimes it's so nuts that it feels quite refreshing and inspiring in the fact that it's just so completely random. And, you know, digital art itself is its own thing. Like that's always fascinated me. You've got artists like Anadol, I think his name is, for instance, and people are like, oh, you should never share AI art as your own. Like you haven't made it, a computer has. And it's like, well, okay, but then it kind of begs the existential question of art itself, and usually that ends up with intent. And what I mean is like, what's the intent of it? Isn't that the point of art, the intent? I mean, does it matter like how you got there? Like if it's Tracy Emin's messy bedroom, if it's like just a simple red square or a collection of photos or an NFT or whatever it might be, it's not really for just anyone on the internet or wherever to say what it is and isn't, because it's not really up to them. Like I have the right to be like, yeah, you know what, that music video is actually a piece of art and I made it. It's like, well, you used AI to make it. I could be like, it's not for you to tell me what art is. You can say that about anything, and I could, you know what I mean? Like, I can turn around and go like, well, it's my art. It's just funny how people like get hung up about saying like being able to dictate what is and isn't art, when I think it's very difficult to do that. And you know, I quite like having fun seeing what AI can do. I don't think I'm using it fraudulently. I'm just playing with this new tech, and I can understand people are fearful of what it can bring, but I really think people should see it as a tool or an instrument and just experiment with it. Like see how it can potentially add another dimension to what you do, or if it helps you to be inspired or helps you focus on more creative aspects of your life. Or yeah, as I was saying, if it's just for fun, then I wouldn't feel guilty about it, because, you know, end of the day, it's not going anywhere. And believe me when I say, like, you don't want to be the one who's left behind, stuck in the mud, pouting and moaning. I don't think it's at a point now anyway where it is objectively better than the human experience or the human touch, whatever you want to call it, in terms of art anyway. And as much as it can replicate and copy and whatnot, it still won't be you. And no matter what happens out there, the only thing that you have, your one selling point, is you. And no one, not a computer, not AI, nothing can take that away from you. So please do keep that in mind. Peace.